Hello, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf, uh, and I am back. I'm doing a kind of marathon this week of a chapter of the Geneva Bible every night, and we'll see if that deepens the experience. I hope for you, certainly I trust for me, to have the continuous narrative night after night after night. So welcome. And those of you who are just joining in, this is the Geneva Bible from 1560, the Founders Bible, Shakespeare's Bible, Jefferson's Bible, the Puritans' Bible, and directly from the Hebrew translated. And we also compare it with the Hebrew from Chabad.org, the Masoretic text, and we compare that to the Revised Standard Version. And what we see throughout is a series of mistranslations. And if you are just joining us now, we're in a section of Leviticus in which is, as I say very transparently with the last few broadcasts, kind of challenging, kind of difficult in some ways, because the narrative has kind of paused. The children of Israel, have left Egypt. They're in the desert. They betrayed God with golden calf. They were half decimated. The faithful are starting again their journey with Yahweh, and they've built the temple of meeting. They've built the ark. They've created the garments of the priests the way God requested. Everything is ready for God to join them. And now God has moved beyond describing what clothes the priest should wear and what embroideries the temple of meeting should have, and how the cherubim should be made out of gold for the Ark of the Covenant. And now he's getting into human behavior and what he needs the children of Israel to do for him to really be God's people and to be close to him and to have him live among them in a state of holiness. And we talked a lot about what that means, lekadesh, to be holy. And these chapters, the last few chapters, are really getting into God creating a Havdalah, Mavdil. He's making a distinction between Tameh, the impure, the ritually unclean, and Tahor, the pure. And this goes to behavior, but it also goes to foods that you eat and don't eat. And we had a chapter yesterday on childbirth, and it was kind of astonishing because talk about mistranslation. I'd always been taught that Leviticus 12, which is about women being kind of separated from the tribe, the community, not going to the temple of meeting for either 33 or 66 days after childbirth, was because they were considered unclean because they were bleeding or they, given birth. And that was kind of misogynist. But incredibly enough, a chapter that I was told was about impurity actually has sentences in it that include, she sits in the blood of her purity, of the blood of purity. So it's, talk about mistranslation. It's a complete inversion of what the Hebrew actually says, what descends to us in the translations. And as, as we've seen over and over and over and over again, when there are mistranslations, they serve to alienate us from God. I think that's a pretty huge realization, that hundreds of years of translations of the Bible into English mistranslate key words almost always, I would say 80% of the time, with the effect of making God seem more unreasonable, making humans seem more disgusting and pathetic, and elevating the role of the priest as a gatekeeper to God. And that just isn't there in the same way in the text. So we've seen so many examples of that. So this chapter, God is continuing, and you'll recognize a lot of the phrasing from earlier similar chapters. God is telling Moses to tell Aaron, basically, what to tell the people. And in this chapter, it's about skin lesions. And honestly, when I was dreading going through Leviticus, it was my memory of this chapter, as well as the childbirth chapter, that really kind of deterred me or made me think, oh, how will I deal with that? How will I understand that? It's kind of intense. It's kind of heavy, kind of mean, because the translations I'd read really seemed to be, well, kind of gross, honestly. I'm sorry, I don't mean the word of God is gross. I mean the idea that that the priest had to really dig in and deal in very graphic way with skin infections, was a difficult thing to wrap my brain around. It's not, holy seeming. It's not elevated. It's not angels and gossamer and harps. It's leprosy, or that's how it's been translated into English. The chapters have been understood to be about leprosy and other infectious skin diseases. So we're going to jump in. We're going to get through it. But before we do, and then I'm going to add the commentary from Rebbe.org, which reads it very, very metaphorically. We'll get to that. But before I do, I just want you to think about what it was like to be human in the desert, surrounded by this wandering tribe, in a very primitive state, right? Without a city, without medical care, without, heat during cold nights or cold during blistering days. I mean, I've been to the Sinai. It is an intense, extreme environment. It's a desert. It's a true desert, right? It's not like, oh, Palm Springs, here's a little oasis with palm trees. No, it's a real, brutal, beautiful, intense, extreme desert environment. Water is scarce. There's very little foliage. I can barely imagine what these sheep and goats were eating unless the microclimate was very different, 4,000 years ago, or 3,000 plus years ago. And also imagine the illnesses that people got. Okay, someone's really harassing me. I'm going to make them go away. So these people were living all together in a camp, and they were, sleeping many to a tent. Families were crowded into tents, that animals were near them, and all they had was each other. So infectious diseases were very terrifying at the best of times in the ancient world, really right up until the 20th century, right, with the invention of antibiotics. But in this period, in the middle of the desert, an infectious disease could wipe out the whole tribe, wipe out the clan. And so they had to take it very seriously. And so this is God. I mean, if you take a big picture view of this, it's God basically saying, I'm going to give you guys instructions in the most minute detail to keep you healthy and well. And to protect you and to keep you from dying of the main things you're likely to die of in the middle of the Sinai Desert. Wild animals, certainly thirst and exposure, certainly starvation, but also infectious diseases. So once you take that broad view, it's a little less, difficult and kind of weird or alien to think about God giving very detailed instructions about how to avoid leprosy, which was a deadly, much feared, devastating infectious disease, from spreading in a tight-knit community where people were depending just on each other. So let's jump right in with the 1560 Geneva Bible, and it's Leviticus 13. And as I always say, if you've got the beautiful big hardback book, the facsimile, go ahead and follow along. And if you don't, Don't worry, you can just go to 1560 Geneva Bible, or I'm sorry, Geneva Bible 1560.com. It's a PDF, and it's right there, for free. So, and the sub headline is what considerations the priest ought to observe in judging the leprosy, the black spot or scab, and the leprosy of the garment. I don't know what that means. Leprosy of the garment, we'll find out. Moreover, the Lord spoke unto Moses and to Aaron, saying, the man that shall have in the skin of his flesh a swelling or a scab or a white spot, so that in the skin of his flesh it be like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priests. And the priest shall look on the sore in the skin of his flesh. If the hair in the sore be turned into white, and the sore seem to be lower than the skin of his flesh, it is a plague of leprosy. Therefore the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. But if the white spot be in the skin of his flesh, and seem not to be lower than the skin, nor the hair thereof be turned unto white, then the priest shall shut up him that has the plague 7 days. You have to stay healthy and well at times like this. You know that I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path collagen. So Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/daily clout, you can stock up on Native Path collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third-party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it's pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice, and they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/daily clout and start your experience of transformation today. After the priest shall look upon him the 7th day. And if the plague seem to him to abide still, to still be present, and the plague grow not in the skin, the priest shall shut him up yet 7 days more. Then the priest shall look on him again the 7th day. And if the plague be dark and the sore grow not in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is a scab. Therefore he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab grow more in the skin after that he is seen of the priest, by the priest, for to be purged, he shall be seen of the priest yet again. Then the priest shall consider, meaning think about it. And if the scab grow in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, for it is leprosy. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, he shall be brought unto the priest, and the priest shall see him. And if the swelling be white in the skin and have made the hair white, and there be raw flesh in the swelling, it is an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall not shut him up, for he is unclean. Also, if the leprosy break out in the skin, and the leprosy cover all the skin of the plague from his head even to his feet, wheresoever the priest looks, then the priest shall consider. And if the leprosy cover all his flesh, he shall pronounce the plague to be clean, because it is all turned into whiteness, so he shall be clean. But if there be raw flesh on him, when he is seen, he shall be unclean. For the priest shall see the raw flesh and declare him to be unclean, for the raw flesh is unclean, therefore it is the leprosy. Or if the raw flesh change and be turned into white, then he shall come into the priest, and the priest shall behold him. And if the sore be changed into white, then the priest shall pronounce the plague clean, for it is clean. The flesh also in whose skin there is a bile and is healed, and in the place of the bile there be a white swelling or a white spot somewhat reddish, it shall be seen of the priest, meaning by the priest. And when the priest sees it, if it appear lower than the skin, and the hair thereof be changed into white, the priest then shall pronounce him unclean, for it is a plague of leprosy broken out in the bile. But if the priest look on it, and there be no white hairs therein, and if it be not lower than the skin, but be darker, then the priest shall shut him up for 7 days. And if it is spread abroad in the flesh, the priest shall pronounce him unclean, for it is a sore. But if the spot continue in his place, meaning in its place, and grow not, it is a burning bile. Therefore the priest shall declare him to be clean. If there be any flesh in whose skin there is an hot burning, and the quick flesh, meaning the living flesh of the burning, have a white spot, somewhat reddish or pale, then the priest shall look upon it, and if the hair in that spot be changed into white, and it appear lower than the skin, it is a leprosy broken out in the burning. Therefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean, for it is the plague of leprosy. But if the priest look on it, and there be no white hair in the spot, and be no lower than the other skin, but be darker, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. After the priest shall look on him the 7th day, if it be grown abroad in the skin, meaning further in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, for it is the plague of leprosy. And if the spot abide in his place, stays in its place, not growing in the skin, but is dark, it is a rising of the burning. The priest shall therefore declare him clean, for it is the drying up of the burning. If also a man or woman has a sore on the head or in the beard, then the priest shall see the sore, and if it appears lower than the skin, and there be in it a small yellow hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, for it is a black spot and leprosy of the head or of the beard. And if the priest look on the sore of the black spot, and if it seem not lower than the skin, nor have any black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up him that has the sore of the black spot 7 days. After, in the 7th day, the priest shall look on the sore, and if the black spot grow not, and there be in it no yellow hair, and the black spot seem not lower than the skin, then he shall be shaven. But the place of the black spot shall he not shave. But the priest shall shut him that has the black spot 7 days more. And the 7th day the priest shall look on the black spot, and if the black spot grow not in the skin, nor seen lower than the other skin, then the priest shall cleanse him, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the black spot grow abroad in the flesh after his cleansing, then the priest shall look on it. And if the black spot grow in the skin, the priest shall not seek for the yellow hair, for he is unclean. But if the black spot seem to him to abide, to stay, and that black hair grows in it, the black spot is healed, he is clean, and the priest shall declare him to be clean. Furthermore, if there be many white spots in the skin of the flesh of man or woman, then the priest shall consider, and if the spots in the skin of their flesh be somewhat dark and white overall, it is but a white spot broken out in the skin, therefore he is clean. And the man whose hair is fallen off his head and is bald is clean. And if his head close the hair on the forepart and be bald before, he is clean. But if there be in the bald head or the bald forehead a white reddish sore, it is a leprosy springing in his bald head or in his bald forehead. Therefore the priest shall look upon it, and if the rising of the sore be white reddish in his bald head or in his bald forehead, appearing like leprosy in the skin of the flesh, he is a leper and unclean. Therefore the priest shall pronounce him altogether unclean, for the sore is in his head. The leper also in whom the plague is shall have his clothes rent, torn, and his head bare, and shall put a covering upon his lips, and shall cry, I am unclean, I am unclean. As long as the disease shall be upon him, he shall be polluted, for he is unclean. He shall dwell alone, outside the camp, shall his habitation be. Also the garment that the plague of leprosy is in, whether it be a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it be in the warp or the woof of linen or of woolen, either in a skin or in anything made of skin, meaning leather. If the sore be green or somewhat reddish in the garment or in the skin or in the warp or in the woof or in anything that is made of skin, it is a plague of leprosy and shall be shown unto the priest. Then the priest shall see the plague and shut up it that has the plague 7 days, and shall look on the plague the 7th day. If the plague grow in the garment or in the warp or in the woof or in the skin or in anything that is made of skin, that plague is a fretting leprosy and unclean. And he shall burn the garment or the warp or the woof. And warp and woof are like threads that are woven in fabric. Whether it be woolen or linen or anything that is made of skin wherein the plague is, for it is a fretting leprosy, therefore it shall be burnt in the fire. So they're saying you can catch leprosy from the garments of the person who's been wearing the garment if they have leprosy. If the priest yet see that the plague grow not in the garment or in the woof or in whatsoever thing of skin it be, then the priest shall command them to wash the thing wherein the plague is, and he shall shut it up 7 days more. Again, the priest shall look on the plague after it is washed. And if the plague have not changed its color, though the plague spread no further, it is unclean. You shall burn it in the fire, for it is a fret inward, whether the spot be in the bare place of the whole or in part thereof. And a fret is a hole, I believe. And if the priest see that the plague be darker after that it is washed, he shall cut it out of the garment or out of the skin, meaning the leather, or out of the warp or out of the woof. And if it appears still in the garment or in the warp or in the woof or in anything made of skin, it is a spreading leprosy. You shall burn the thing wherein the plague is in the fire. If you have washed the garment or the warp or the woof or whatsoever thing of the skin it be, if the plague be departed therefrom, then shall it be washed the second time and be clean. This is the law of the plague of leprosy in a garment of woolen or linen, or in the warp or in the woof, or in anything of skin to make it clean or unclean. So that is the Geneva. But wow, this is so nice. I have over 1,000 people jumping in to hear Leviticus 13, even though it's a difficult chapter. That is wonderful. Welcome. So that's the 1560 Bible, Leviticus 13. And you can hear some echoes from the previous chapter. You remember in the previous chapter, it ended, this is the law of childbirth. And so this ends, this is the law of how you treat the garments of people who are leprous. And, by implication, this is the law, this is the instruction, this is the guidance, these are the rules, essentially, for people who have leprosy in the camp. It seems very sad, right? I remember I first read this chapter when I was like 12 or 13 on some high holy day when I was just leafing through the 5 books of Moses, and the notion that people with leprosy would be sent to live alone outside the camp, shut away for 7 days or 14 days, or if they didn't get better, really sent into exile outside the camp, which is a dangerous situation, right? That's almost a death sentence, seemed really sad. And there's a famous sentence in Leviticus 13 that descends into Western culture, which is the leper saying, unclean, unclean. Actually, in the Middle Ages, the leper was supposed to carry a bell and say, unclean, unclean, and ring the bell as he or she walked around in order to warn people to keep away from the leper. So sad. Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout. Have you ever wondered why your brain can feel foggy even when you're eating clean and exercising? It might not be burnout, it could be parasites. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan McDonald reveals a direct link between chronic parasite infections and neurological diseases, such as multiple sclerosis. Parasites can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long-term cognitive decline. More reason to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. The wellness company has a solution for you, ivermectin and mebendazole, the gold standard parasite solution now combined in one cleanse combo, designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some trendy herbal gimmick. Fill out a quick intake form and you'll get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door. Maha is officially here, and the wellness company is making hard to get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to dailyclout.health and use code dailyclout to save $60 off plus free shipping on all orders. Cleanse your body today. Get rid of parasites today. Thank you. Right. And the leper covering his face or her face, down to the lips. What does this remind us of? Right. I mean, this was a real infectious disease with real dangers, and there was no alternative but isolation. I mean, this was before any kind of modern medicine. But it doesn't make it, less sad to read about. It's so interesting that our fear of infectious disease, which is so captured in this chapter, was really drawn on during the COVID hysteria. It was the same idea: unclean, unclean. The unvaccinated were unclean. You weren't supposed to go near them. They were supposed to be exiled from society outside the camp of humanity. Very similar. And I would say that these stories from the Hebrew Bible are so ingrained in Western consciousness, whether we're aware of them or not, that stories like the COVID story and the, exile the unvaccinated or exile the person with COVID or whatever it is, let them die alone. These come from, they're informed by our collective memory of these stories. And certainly Leviticus 13, this very sad, somber, recognition that some people have a deadly infection. And the priest was tasked by God with the role of, examining in a very graphic and granular way the bodies of people who were infected with this disease particularly, to ascertain if they should be reintegrated into the community or be shut away until they healed, or if they didn't heal, really be exiled from the community altogether. So it's a big responsibility, and you recognize that that we're kind of, how can I put it? I'm just banning a user who's harassing me. This is so tiresome. This is really a medical chapter, right? It's about medical practice. It's medical guidance from God, really, for the children of Israel. And when I was reading through it and kind of going, this is gross, this is gross, this is gross, I was also thinking, I'm not a medical doctor, and medical doctors have to learn things that are pretty gross. This is what you do with scrofula. This is what you do with gangrene. This is what you do with, pus when you're lancing a boil. It's like gross, but doctors are trained to deal with the gross things our bodies do, right? And it seems surprising, just like it was sort of surprising in a world of very sanitized religion, that we had such a graphic description of what to do with women who are bleeding from childbirth in the last chapter. So it seems kind of surprising that in the sacred text, there's this chapter about the priest, examining lesions on the bodies of infected people and checking, whether the hair in the boil or in the lesion is golden or black, or whether the skin has been depressed. But really, if you, again, take a step back, at a time without any doctors as we understand them, and certainly the children of Israel in the middle of the desert probably didn't have any kind of systematized medicine at all. They might have had kind of folk remedies that they remembered from their lives in Egypt, but they were kind of probably at the mercy of the elements because they didn't have the many things to make use of in the middle of the desert to heal people, right? If you look at it that way, then this is kind of a beautifully humble chapter in which God is saying, okay, some of you are going to get sick. Sickness is part of the human condition. You're in the middle of the desert. If an infectious disease arises, a serious infectious disease that could wipe you all out, I'm going to give you instructions in very graphic, humbling detail. Like the human body can be so gross, it's kind of humbling, right? To be human and know that, if you have leprosy, you're going to erupt in boils that are reddish white, or, all this graphic description of the lesions. But God is kind of caring so much about us that he is willing to say, okay, and this is how you check the boils, and this is how you check the lesion, and this is how it's infectious. And if it turns dark and is no longer full of raw flesh, then the guy's getting better. If you think of it that way, it's quite moving. So, like, God is really more than getting down to our level. God is really being the doctor, right? And in the most, giving medical instruction for people in the most disgusting condition, the most repellent condition. So obviously God made the leper. God's not repelled by the leper. But if you think about it that way, it's very caring. It's like a parent taking care of a disgustingly sick child, right? And it's also caring to the rest of the community, because God is trying, and you see this throughout these 3 books. God keeps trying to keep disaster from befalling his children, right? They have free will, they can mess up, they can bring misfortune upon themselves, but he keeps trying to give them all the tools they need to not be wiped out, and to make it through this arduous journey in the desert to get eventually to the Holy Land, which hasn't even been discussed yet, by the way. They don't know where they're going. They're just following Moses out of slavery. So that's pretty intense. I didn't really think about that either when I thought about the Bible in the past, because you don't read it chapter by chapter, but we always kind of think with, Disney movies or whatever, children's Bibles, that you sort of conflate this timeline. You sort of think, oh, the children of Israel in the desert knew that they were going to a land flowing with milk and honey. If you're like me and you're getting to that age at which your body sometimes just hurts all the time, please listen. Don't reach for another painkiller until you learn about this turmeric hack for pain and inflammation. You've probably already heard that turmeric is being used to fight inflammation and joint pain, but not all turmeric is created equal. Regular turmeric powder in your pantry will help you a little, but a leading pain doctor from Connecticut discovered a special turmeric extract that is 200 times more powerful than what you find in standard turmeric. And when he shared this turmeric secret with his patients, the results were extraordinary. This turmeric extract attacks pain at the source, turning it off like a light switch, so that pain not only often goes away, but stays away. Dr. Josh, the brains behind it all, has spent 20 years helping hundreds of thousands of Americans finally break free from constant aches and stiffness. And his turmeric hack has been the backbone of their success. So don't engage, if you can avoid it, with expensive surgeries, pain injections, or inefficient over-the-counter medications with side effects. Greet pain-free living. It's incredible stuff. I started taking it regularly, and I really did notice a difference. Again, you can't just take any old turmeric. If you want to learn more about Dr. Josh's turmeric secret and the exact method for how to use it in your routine, go to goldenrevive.com/dailycloud. The link is right below this video in the description. Click on it and start your journey toward a pain-free, healthier life. Well, they don't know that yet. They don't know anything about where they're going. They're in this complete existential kind of state of having to trust this God they don't know, this crazy guy Moses who keeps telling them to do crazy things that no one's ever done before. And Aaron, his brother, they don't know if they're going to get out alive. They don't know where the water is. They don't know if they're going to die in the desert. They said to Moses, before they built the golden calf, like, we wish we'd never left Egypt. We miss the flesh pots of Egypt. It was better to be slaves than to be stuck here in the desert, not knowing what's going to become of us. So you really don't think about that, in the kind of truncated sense of the Bible that we get. But reading it chapter by chapter by chapter, all these things are happening in the middle of the desert to people who have no idea where they're going or what's going to happen to them, or that there will ever be a land flowing with milk and honey, which is pretty deep. So that's the discussion I wanted to share about Leviticus 13 in the 1560 Geneva Bible. So now let's take a look at the Hebrew. And I'm not going to read it all the way through because it is quite technical. Again, it's very medical, as you know. And one interesting thing is that in the 1560 Geneva Bible, the leper, or the person who may have leprosy, is shut up for 7 days. And in the Hebrew, it's actually quarantine. Well, it's translated as quarantine, but it's Hizgiru HaKohen. It is more like lisgor is to shut someone up, to close something. So this person is closed. The priest will close him for 7 days for a second time. And so it's not really quarantine. That's kind of an over elaborated word. It's really just closing him up, setting him aside, not to include him in the community until we know that he's not infectious. And so it's pretty straightforward. But the other word I'm going to call your attention to is that, the translation of what the priest is looking at in all these translations is clean and unclean, clean and unclean. And that really descends to us, that dichotomy is clean and unclean. But Hebrew speakers have been pointing out, and it's true, and I'm pointing it out, that the word in Hebrew really isn't clean versus unclean. It's tahor. And you know that word well by now. It's pure, right? It's in a state of spiritual cleanliness, but it's spiritual cleanliness, right? It's not like material clean versus unclean. And the opposite of tahor is tameh, as you recall. And so here we have it again as a verb, basar chai yitma. The live flesh, it's talking about the lesion, if live flesh appears in it, living flesh literally appears in it, yitma, it will become impure. It will become ritually impure. So again, it's much more compassionate in the Hebrew. It's that distinction we talked about in the last 2 chapters between the holy and the not holy, right? But it's not like, oh, gross, you're unclean. It has a different connotation. So everything is just very technical, almost dermatological, the lesion, the golden hair, pretty straightforward. The baldness, the garments. I just want to note when it says his garments shall be torn, begadav yiyu plumim, beged is a garment or clothing, will be rent or will be torn. As I mentioned in the past, that is, I don't want to say Jewish because Judaism doesn't exist yet, but that's the traditional way of showing mourning, right? And so if his garments are torn, it means that he's signaling that he's not in a state of wholeness, in which he can be, among people. And let's see how in line 45 he says unclean, unclean in the Hebrew. Veha tsarua asher bo, and the person with the tsara'at is how they pronounce it, tsarua, that is in him, hanega begadav, yu prumim verosho, his garments shall be torn, his head, yiyeh parua, will be unshorn, ve'al safam, yate ve'tameh tameh ikra, and unto his mustache he shall cover himself, and tameh tameh ikra, impure he will call. So it's still sad, but it's more about being in a state of apartness rather than uncleanness or, ritual impurity, basically. Now, how does it say he shall dwell isolated in line 46? And you hear that repetition of tameh, tameh a lot. Kol yemei asher hanega, all the days that the lesion is on him, bo, or is in him, yitma tameh. It will impure be. Who badad yeshev, that's so sad. Alone he will sit, literally, or he will live. Michutz lamachane, outside of the camp. Moshavo, his dwelling place. And you hear the repetition of yeshev and moshavo. It's the same root. Lashevet is to sit. It also means to live or to dwell. I told you earlier, moshav, which is like a kibbutz, comes from that same root. And there's the lesion, there are the threads, and let's see, it shall be immersed a second time. And then the last sentence is 59, Zot Torat Nega Tzara'at. This is the Torah, this is the law of the lesion of Tzara'at, Beged Hatsemer, on a garment of wool, or hapishtim, or linen, or hashti, or ha'erev, or kol kli, or letaharo, or letam'o, warp or woof threads, or any leather article. And I'm going to say it again, letaharo o letam'o, to purify it or to make it impure. So different, right? Much less judgmental. And I just want to see what the Revised Standard Version does. I won't dwell on it a lot because, again, it's such a technical chapter. You're probably not going to see a lot of language variation. But this is interesting. This Revised Standard Version has a lot of repetition of the word diseased. The disease appears to be deeper. It is a leprous disease. He shall shut up the diseased person. If in his eyes the disease is checked and the disease has not spread in the skin, the disease spot is dim, the disease has not spread in the skin. I'm not repeating, it actually says it twice. And the priest shall pronounce him unclean, it is leprosy. So lots of disease. But in the Hebrew, it's, do they say disease a lot in the Hebrew? Let's go back to that. It's definitely tzara'at. They use the word for the disease, but it's not like a repetition of diseased, right? It's much more kind of neutral. It's a leprous disease. when a man or woman has a disease on the head or the beard, the priest shall examine the disease. And if the priest examines the itching disease, the priest shall shut the person with the itching disease for 7 days. And on the seventh day shall examine the disease. I mean, literally every other word here is disease. That is very interesting. And reddish white diseased spot, diseased swelling, leper who has the disease. This is really interesting and weird. This is all about if the disease shows greenish or reddish in the garment, he shall examine the disease. If the disease has spread in the garment, I mean, it's almost obsessive. If the priest examines and the disease has not spread, the priest shall command, they wash the thing in which is the disease. The priest shall examine the diseased thing after it has been washed, and if the diseased spot has not changed color, though the disease has not spread, it is unclean. And the disease is dim after it is washed, then it shall be washed a second time. This is the law for a leprous disease in a garment of wool or linen, either in warp or woof, or in anything of skin, to decide whether it is clean or unclean. Wow, this is trippy, you guys, because I just don't recall that in the Hebrew or in the revised, in the 1560 Geneva Bible, it says disease, 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 disease. It says sapachat or baheret. It's like the language of the lesion, but it's not saying disease, disease, disease. It's just very technically describing a lesion. Behold, the lesion has not spread. The lesion has become dimmer. The lesion of tzara'at. So everywhere, so interesting. Everywhere in the Hebrew, it says lesion, which is a very technical term, right? It's something on your body that the priest is examining. The Revised Standard Version translates it as disease. And in that repetition, there must have been 35 iterations of the word disease in that short chapter in the Revised Standard Version. So it has a very different feeling. It's much less compassionate. It's much more freaky. It's much more judgmental, right? Like literally in the Hebrew, the priest is very objectively looking at someone's body and trying to figure out if the lesion indicates an infectious state, and trying to assess it, right? He hasn't already decided. It's a process of analysis. It's almost like a description of symptoms over time that the priest is supposed to be looking for. But he hasn't decided from the outset that this person is diseased. But in the English Revised Standard Version, the modern translation, it's disease, 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 disease. I think it's very COVID-y again. I think it has that effect almost hypnotically of suggesting this fear state, and that humans are diseased or risk being diseased. And if they're diseased, they're unclean. And that's not the vibe of the Hebrew. It's certainly a very serious thing that the priest is dealing with, but he doesn't prejudge. He's checking, he's seeing, and he's being as calm as possible as he assesses these symptoms of what could or could not be a diseased state. So it's a completely different chapter in the Revised Standard Version. Now, I'm just going to read one more thing. And by the way, remember at the end of the last chapter when it said 33 days or 66 days for a woman to be isolated after childbirth, I said right when we were wrapping up that Judaism, and it goes back certainly to this period, has sacred numbers and actually a whole sacred numerology. I mean, that came later. That came, from Tzfat and the mystics, and the rabbis after the Second Temple's destruction developed numerology. But remember when I said that Hebrew's kind of a magical language, every letter in Hebrew corresponds to a number. And so the whole kind of later Jewish numerology sees patterns in the numbers that correspond to the letters in a given word. That's a bit of an aside, but the point is there are sacred numbers in Judaism. And one of them is 33, which I mentioned, which was the age that Jesus was when he died. One is 7, which I also mentioned. So here twice you have the iteration of 7 days he'll be shut up. If he's not better, another 7 days, the person with leprosy or who may have leprosy is shut up. 7 days it took for God to make the world, and on the 7th day he rested. There's a lot of magic in the number 7. So I'm just mentioning that. And I want now to go to the Rebbe.org, which is the resource from Chabad that I've started to use with these chapters that are so difficult because they seem so kind of literal and just challenging, with people being separated out as unclean and sent to live by themselves. So in the Rebbe.org, the previous chapter, which was about childbirth, is contrasted with this chapter, and the contrast is life and death. And it says the name Tatzriya, which underscores the theme of conception, is connected not only to the opening passages, but to the reading in its entirety. This appears to present a difficulty, for although the first passages speak about birth, meaning the last chapter we read, the main body of the reading concerns itself with tzara'at, a bodily affliction resembling leprosy. Tzara'at is the very opposite of new life. Indeed, our sages, the rabbis, state that a person afflicted with tzara'at is considered dead. What place does such a subject have in a Torah reading associated with new life? And this is where it's actually helpful because it gets beyond the literal. This difficulty can be resolved on the basis of 2 concepts. First, tzara'at is not merely a physical malady. It is, to quote the Rambam, who's a great commentator on the Torah, quote, beyond the natural pattern of the world, a divine sign and wonder for the Jewish people to warn them against speaking lashon hara, and that's gossip and slander. It means literally, lashon is tongue, and hara, ha is the, and ra is evil. So it's evil tongue, it's gossip and slander, it's negative speech. So in this exposition, the tzara'at, the leprosy or the boils or the lesions don't come out of nowhere. They're read as a warning, almost a magical warning to the Jewish people not to engage in evil speech. And this is, a very common ancient belief that if someone's afflicted with something, they may have committed a moral sin, right? If they're afflicted with something physically. Secondly, the punishments prescribed by the Torah are not for the sake of retribution. This comes up over and over in our readings, guys, but rather to absolve a person's sin and enable him to correct his faults. Tzara'at clearly expresses this principle. Because a person creates strife and friction between others, he becomes afflicted with tzara'at, and as a result is required to remain alone. Only when he has removed the influence of friction from himself, it is possible for his body to be purified and for him to rejoin society. Thus, tzara'at, the leprosy-like symptoms, is a divine instrument intended to prod an individual toward personal refinement and encourage the spread of peace and love. As such, it is an extension of the theme of Tatzriya, focusing on our efforts to bring something new and pure into ourselves and our environment. Tzara'at is employed as an analogy. Again, these rabbinical exegeses, at least in Chabad, are very metaphorical, right? So he's saying it's an analogy, it's a metaphor to describe the status of our people in the present age, for we are in exile, quote, alone with our dwelling outside the camp, end quote. Yet our divine service centers on Tatzriya, sowing seeds of godly influence through our observance of the mitzvot, the commandments, and we will reap the harvest of these efforts with the coming of Mashiach. May this be in the immediate future. And just a reminder that Jews don't believe the Mashiach has come yet. I don't know, right? But Chabad definitely believes that the Mashiach the Messiah is coming in the future. So there you have it. It doesn't really show why this physical manifestation, these lesions, are connected with gossip or slander. This is a summary from a very revered exegetical text called the Tanya, which kind of goes through the 5 books of Moses and explains it. As I understand it, I need to know more about it, but the gist is that these afflictions aren't punishments. They're ways to help us course correct, and that the isolation, which seems so sad and depressing and like punitive, actually is a way for someone who has caused strife and friction with what he or she has said to reflect and be alone and consider, his or her actions, so to refine his or her intention, to bring purity into his or her self. Said really well, I thought, and rejoin the community more dedicated to creating harmony and love. So that's that analysis. So now we have a bunch of comments. Let's see. So Sean Rhodes, who really knows his Bible, points out that in Numbers, which we haven't gotten to yet, 12:14, quote, "And the Lord said unto Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not hide in shame 7 days? Let her be shut up without the camp 7 days, and after that she shall be brought in again." So this idea of spend 7 days outside the camp, is going to extend into future books of the 5 books of Moses. And he also says, Numbers 12:15, "And Miriam was shut up without," meaning outside the camp, 7 days, "and the people journeyed not till Miriam was brought in again." So Miriam, you haven't met her yet, except when the children of Israel crossed the Red Sea successfully and escaped their pursuers, the Egyptian army. She led the women in celebrating with music. But you're going to meet her again. She's the sibling of this extraordinary group of siblings, Moshe and Aaron. She's their sister, and she's an extraordinary woman. But indeed, she was shut up outside of the camp for 7 days. And we'll get to why that happens. Sean Rhodes also mentions King Uzziah, that he had a censer in his hand to burn incense, and while he was wroth, angry with the priests, the leprosy broke forth in his forehead before the priests in the house of the Lord beside the altar of incense. Wow, you guys really know your sacred text. Betsy Dooner says Jess's mentions the blind man was not afflicted out of guilt. And then Uzziah was a leper until the day of his death and dwelt in a house set apart, being a leper, for he was cut off from the house of the Lord. So leprosy is a theme for sure. And it does seem to be connected in this very excellent reminder of the story of Uzziah, which we haven't gotten to yet, that it was, in that case, it's read as like an inner anger erupts in external lesions or boils. And weirdly, modern medicine or alternative medicine kind of says the same thing, that if you have a lot of rage, it can come out in these symptoms, right? And the rabbinical commentary seems to say the same thing, that people who are causing friction and strife, may come out with these symptoms. I'm never going to blame someone for their medical condition, or assume that they have a moral problem. But it was very common in the ancient world to think that a medical problem suggested a moral problem. And certainly it comes up in these many examples as, I'm going to say divine punishment. I mean, God sending leprosy to people who are prideful. He did corruptly and trespassed against the Lord, says Sean Rhodes. And wow, you guys, and there's Donald Wortham. Wow. Colossians 1:22, in the body of his flesh through death to present you holy and unblameable and unreprovable in his sight. That's a great quote. You guys are really cooking with gas, as they say. Sean Rhodes says, Tzara'at wasn't what was contagious. It's what Tzara'at represented. In the case of Miriam, the sister of Moshe, she was overstepping her boundaries by seeking a higher position even above Moses. That is really interesting. And that really goes along with, this theme that it seems to be a symbol and of a moral problem. So that makes the Revised Standard Versions very reductive, disease, reading all the more impoverished, I think. If there's this dimension of pride and stubbornness and self-regard and engendering conflict, then this passage and the metaphor of leprosy makes sense. And Pugnacious for Truth says, God gave them the commandments and instructions because they were under Egypt's knowledge for 400 years. Well, they certainly were under Egypt's knowledge for 400 years. Wow, Donald Wortham, you're finding a lot of relevant quotes. Zechariah 13:1, in that day there shall be a fountain opened to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness. So I imagine a lot of Christians would read that passage as foreshadowing the birth, the arrival of Yeshua, who is seen by Christians as Mashiach, as the Messiah. All right, guys, once again, we've come to the end of our time. Once again, I had thought I was not going to find a way into this chapter, and kind of incredibly, with your help, the chapter opens out even a very, initially difficult and challenging chapter. So it's really food for thought, right? And if we are suffering in some way, whether with physical or emotional maladies, this passage definitely reminds us to kind of look at ourselves and take some time, to maybe not literally be alone, but to have space to reflect and examine what we're doing, and if maybe we are contributing in some way to the disharmony or dis-ease that we're experiencing. Again, never to blame the victim, but that seems to be the theme here, and certainly the theme from the analysis by the rabbis, that always love and harmony in our speech and in our social life is the goal. And how often do I personally fall short of that, man? I can tell you, like, I remember going to a Buddhist retreat when I was a very young woman, and they talked about the Eightfold Path. And one of the things you're supposed to seek is right speech. And that means not gossiping, not complaining, not lying, certainly, right? Not saying hateful things, not hurting people's feelings. And I thought, wow, out of all the things I could identify that I'm doing wrong, that I'm tempted by, harmful gossip was the one that, I really realized I kind of do engage in that, and I better stop. It's hard. It's a discipline. And one falls off the wagon, regularly, get back on the wagon. But this passage really reminds us to, bring purity into our speech and purity into our social lives in that best sense. Okay, guys, I'm going to let you go. We can think about the pure and the impure, what in our lives makes us feel like we're getting closer to purity or bringing purity out of ourselves, what makes us feel like it puts us in a state of impurity. I'm sure you have your personal list. I have my personal list, right? Like how I feel after doom scrolling on X is like I'm in a state of impurity for sure. Random shopping on Amazon. I'm in a state of impurity. I could go on. Certainly being short-tempered with my loved ones, or not patient, or not listening, or not attentive. All of these things. The pure and the impure, right? It's such an essential divider. And it was, it is for us, and it was for this group of hapless people in the middle of the desert trying to find a relationship with a God they're really just getting to know. And he's trying to find a way to have a relationship with a people that he's just getting to know. All right. I will see you here tomorrow night around the same time, around 9 o'clock. And remember, if you like these readings, we need your support. You can subscribe over on Outspoken on Substack, or you can subscribe on Daily Clout, or you can donate in either place. It helps us pay for all the people who produce and distribute these videos. And if you can't do that, keep us in your thoughts and prayers, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.